Have you ever shared something that was very private to you, and at the exact second the words came out of your mouth, you realized that you had just lost something precious that you could never get back? It was not a hidden secret or something you were ashamed of, but it was a very delicate part of your inner soul. It could be a dream that had not fully developed yet. It could be a fear that you had not given a name to yet, or perhaps an intuition that had just appeared and then vanished. We usually think that talking about things will make us feel better. However, in Jungian psychology, there are some things that the more you talk about them out loud, the more you lose your power over them. Carl Jung believed that the human soul has very deep parts where the smallest changes happen in total silence. If the things that happen in those deep parts are told to the wrong person at the wrong time, they will be ruined by that person's ego, or even by your own ego. They will become weak or even turn into a heavy weight that you never wanted to carry. There are some things you should not talk about, not because you are afraid of being judged, but because staying quiet is how you protect the process of your own inner growth. This video is not trying to teach you how to be silent toward the rest of the world. Instead, it is here to show you that there are 7 specific things, according to Carl Jung, that if you keep them to yourself, your life will change in ways that are very small, yet very deep, in ways you might never have imagined. If you are prepared to go into the deepest parts of your inner world, where even one single sentence can change your whole life journey, then we will start now. Number 1, your deepest desires, where your life energy is moving. There is something very unusual about the deepest goals of human beings. These desires never show up in a noisy environment. They come to you in moments when you are all alone, when the pressure of life goes away and your mind becomes calm enough to hear a very quiet call from inside yourself. Many people have said that they discovered their true dream in moments that seemed completely normal. It could be an afternoon spent watching the sun through a window, an evening sitting in peace after a very long day, or the sudden feeling that they were living a life that did not truly belong to them. Carl Jung called this feeling the direction of the libido. This is not libido in the common way of physical desire, but as the basic life energy looking for a path towards something that has real meaning. Jung once wrote that your vision will only become clear when you can look into your own heart. He said, "Those who look outside are only dreaming, but those who look inside are the ones who wake up." This energy is so fragile that if you show it to others too early, it can disappear like mist in the wind. Jung thought that everything sacred in the human mind needs darkness to grow properly. Think about a seed that has just been planted. If you keep digging it up to check on it, or to show other people if it has grown yet, you will accidentally kill the very thing you are trying to take care of. Dreams work the same way. Jung believed that your deepest goals always test you at this exact point. They require you to have the bravery to stay silent with the world until you are strong enough to move forward. Even a single raised eyebrow or a careless comment from someone else can be enough to change the flow of your energy and cause you to quit your path before it even truly starts. This does not mean that you are a weak person. It simply means that a real desire is like a delicate living thing. It needs darkness, the heat of patience, and silence to find its true shape. The things you talk about too soon no longer belong to you. They become topics owned by other people and are put under their judgment, their comparisons, and their doubts. Once a woman shared that she really wanted to start a small bakery. Every single morning she woke up early, tried new recipes, and wrote down every small mistake she made. But the second she told a coworker that she was thinking about quitting her job to follow her dream, she was hit with many warnings. People told her that business is not easy, or asked if she could support a family, or told her she already had a safe job and shouldn't dream like that. She said what made her stop was not the words themselves, but the sudden loss of energy inside her, as if a fire had been blown out. When she went back to her normal routine, she realized she had lost the most important part of her dream, the time when it was still a holy secret that belonged only to her. Jung believed that your unconscious mind knows what fits your soul long before your logical mind does. But the unconscious does not speak in loud words. It speaks in small feelings, quiet thoughts, and sensations you cannot easily explain.
Speaking too soon allows language to get in the way of that flow and ruin it. Silence, on the other hand, gives you the time to see if the desire really belongs to you or if it is just an echo of what society wants, what your family expects, or constant comparison with others. Remember that not everyone is sensitive enough to understand your dream, especially when you are still trying to understand it yourself. Some people will put their own fears onto you, others will accidentally put their own limits on your path, and some people talk just because of habit, not knowing that one sentence can change another person's life. Protecting your deepest goals is not being selfish. It is a duty you have to your own soul. You do not need to tell everyone, you don't need to convince anyone, and you don't need to ask for permission. What is important is not that other people understand you, but that you are patient enough to protect your dream before you show it to the world. And that is exactly why the first thing you should not tell anyone is your deepest desires. They are the first stage of a birth, and every birth needs darkness to form. Number 2, the things you fear most because they are windows into the shadow.
After you protect your deepest desires, there is another thing that needs the same level of protection: the fears you have never been brave enough to say out loud. This is because sometimes what makes you weak is not the fear itself, but the look and the words of someone who does not have the depth to understand what you are feeling. Fear is always the raw material of the shadow, which is the dark part that Jung believed every person has inside them. The problem is not whether you feel fear, but that telling it to the wrong person can turn it into a broken mirror that shows a version of yourself you were not ready to see. Not everyone knows how the mind works, and not everyone is able to handle a person's fear with kindness. Imagine holding a piece of broken glass in your hand. In the hands of a person who knows how to heal, they will carefully help you take it out. But in the hands of someone who does not understand, they might grab it in a clumsy way, and every careless move can make the wound deeper. Fear is the same. If you put it in the wrong hands, it will not be healed. Instead, it will be twisted, made bigger, and ruined. I once heard a story about a woman who always worried that she was not good enough at her job. One day, she talked to a coworker and shared that she was afraid of making mistakes and being seen as bad at her work. She thought that speaking out loud would make her feel better, but the opposite happened. A few weeks later in a meeting, she heard that same coworker using her private secret to suggest that she did not have confidence in her work. What had been a small fear, once just a quiet thought in her mind, became a giant shadow over her career, changing how others saw her, and even worse, how she saw herself. When she thought about it later, she said she did not blame the coworker. What hurt the most was knowing she had given a piece of her shadow to someone who was not able to hold it properly. In Jung's language, every fear is a door into the shadow, and not everyone can walk through that door without hurting you. The shadow contains the things you have not yet been brave enough to admit. These are the hidden parts of the soul, and people who do not understand its nature can easily use what you tell them to hurt you, often without meaning to. Jung wrote that until you make the hidden parts of your mind known to yourself, they will control your life, and you will call it fate. If you tell your fears to someone who does not have deep understanding, they might reply with common phrases like, "It's nothing to worry about," or "Everyone feels that way," or even, "Don't be so weak." Or even worse, they might use it against you when you don't expect it. To them, your fear is just a piece of information. To you, it is a delicate emotional balance, and every mean word can send you into a bad state. The shadow works in a specific way. Anything that is touched in the wrong way immediately becomes bigger. If someone hits your fear with the wrong energy, the shadow makes it many times larger. You become more worried, more defensive, and you doubt yourself more. This is not because you are weak, but because the shadow, like a dark room, reacts to every light that is shown on it, even if it is a bad light. Modern science calls this emotional amplification. When you say a fear out loud, your brain thinks it is very important. If the person listening reacts negatively or without feeling, your nervous system records the fear as a real danger, causing a stronger stress reaction. One bad remark at the wrong time can trigger the part of the brain called the amygdala, which is the fear center, creating a cycle of anxiety that is much stronger than before. This is why Jung said that not everyone deserves to see your shadow. Fear needs understanding, not just an explanation from someone else's point of view. Therefore, the second thing you should not tell just anyone is your deepest fears. Not because they must stay hidden forever, but because they need a space that is safe enough for you to face them yourself before you show them to the rest of the world. Number 3, unprocessed psychological wounds, because the ego will defend in the wrong direction.
If fear makes you wait, there is something even more delicate, something that can change how you live in the world without you even knowing it. These are your unhealed wounds. This is the third thing that, according to Jung, should not be shared with careful thought. A psychological wound, when it first happens, often has no clear shape. It exists as a mix of emotions, reactions, and internal signs that you have not named yet. One single piece of bad advice at the wrong time can make the experience even more tangled, making it more confusing and leaving you lost in your attempt to understand yourself. This is why Jung believed that an experience that hasn't been given a meaning yet is easily ruined when it is told too soon. When you do not yet understand what is happening inside you, you tell the story from a place of messiness. Jung wrote that there is no way to become aware without experiencing pain, and when the person listening does not have depth, they reflect that messiness back to you many times over. I once met a woman named Anna who had gone through a deep shock after a long relationship ended. Because she felt weak, she told her story to a coworker, hoping to feel better. Instead of getting understanding, she got comments like, "You must have done something wrong," or "I think he just got tired of you," or "You were never right for each other anyway." These words were not meant to be mean, they were just shallow, but to a wound that was still fresh, they felt like hidden knives. Later, she said the most painful part was not the breakup itself, but the label she felt was put on her, that she was not good enough to be chosen. And it all started because she gave a wound that had not closed yet to someone who could not hold it with kindness. Jung warned that the ego reacts in a defensive way when a wound is touched before it has been processed. A careless comment can change an experience from something that just happened to you into a bad story that you start to believe is part of who you are. From that point on, you live inside a story that you never actually wrote. Imagine a psychological wound like a piece of paper that is soaked with water. If you try to open it too early, the paper will tear, the ink will spread, and the page will be ruined. But if you let it dry slowly, it stays in its shape and shows you what it was supposed to teach you. Psychological wounds need the same kind of patience, a quiet time in which you understand yourself, what happened, and how it helps you grow. In Greek myths, the god Hephaestus was thrown from the mountain as a child, which left him with a permanent injury. What is important is not the fall itself, but how he lived with that pain. He did not complain or look for pity. Instead, he turned his pain into great skill, becoming the creator of the most beautiful items for the gods. His story reminds us that the deepest wounds often find their meaning only when they are held in silence for a long time. Sometimes letting the pain speak for itself is how you protect it from the wrong meanings given by other people. That is why Jung said, some wounds are not meant to be talked about, but to be understood. Certain kinds of pain require you to sit with them, look at them, ask them questions, and let them answer in their own way, not through someone else's logic. When you speak too soon, you give away the power to define that wound to the listener, who might change it into something completely different from the truth. The third thing you should not tell just anyone is your unhealed wounds. Not because they must be a secret, but because they are looking for a safe place to be seen clearly. They need peace, not judgment. They need understanding, not curiosity. And they need time, not fast advice. And when you become strong enough to touch that wound with your own hands, you will see that silence is sometimes not about avoiding things, but it is a way to love yourself. Number 4, your judgments of others, because they may be projections.
After looking at your unhealed inner parts, have you ever wondered what happens when you look at the outside world and start talking about other people, especially the ones who make you angry? Jung believed that what you see in other people is often not the real truth about them, but a hidden piece of yourself that you have not been brave enough to face. This is why the fourth thing you should not share casually is your judgments of other people. Jung once said that everything that makes us angry about others can lead us to understand ourselves better. When you understand this, you see that judgments, especially the strong ones, rarely show the true character of the person you are judging. Instead, they show what your own ego is trying to hide. When you complain that someone is being too controlling, there might be a part of you that wants control but hasn't admitted it. When someone's loud behavior annoys you, it might show a hidden desire in you to speak up more. And when you call others selfish, it might be because you have not allowed yourself to see your own needs. In therapy, I once heard about a woman who kept complaining about a man at work she called arrogant and bossy. She told this to many people to get them to agree with her, but the people who listened felt something was wrong. The man was actually nice, just very sure of his ideas. In therapy, she was asked one question: what about his confidence bothers you? She then realized she had always wanted to speak her mind, but was afraid of being rejected. His confidence was a mirror for what she didn't have but wanted. Because she couldn't face this, she turned it into a judgment. Her story shows that judging others is often the mind's way of saying, look at yourself.
Jung described projection as a very sneaky defense of the mind. When you can't face a part of yourself, you push it onto someone else and think the problem is them. In truth, the problem is in your own dark corner. Sharing mean judgments about others not only shows your own psychological blind spots, but it also takes you away from the path of growing up that Jung called individuation. When you talk too much about what you don't like in others, you show the world what you haven't accepted in yourself. And if the people listening don't have wisdom, they might use your own words to judge you, even if you didn't mean it. So whenever someone feels impossible to deal with, ask yourself what part of them is asking you to look at something inside yourself. This is not an attack on you, but an invitation. Even the strongest reactions have hidden messages, and sometimes silence is the only way to get enough space to see what really belongs to you and what is just the shadow of the ego leaking out. Silence here is not about ignoring or denying the truth. It is a pause, a space to see your own reaction before you turn it into a story. Because once you change a quick emotion into words, you risk not only hurting others, but also freezing the very truth you need to see. Ask yourself, what inside me was triggered? That is why Jung said that judgments of others should not be shared without thinking, not because you have to pretend to be nice, but because you must protect your inner mind from the mess caused by your own shadow. When you become calm enough to listen to your own reactions, you might find that what makes you most angry in others is often calling you to grow. And if this part meant something to you, if you have ever realized that your judgment of someone else was just a reflection of yourself, share a very short story in the comments, just one line. You might be shocked to see how such a small bit of honesty can be a mirror that helps others see deeper into themselves. Number 5, your most private intuitions, because they are the voice of the unconscious and synchronicity.
After recognizing how your judgments of other people can reflect the hidden shadow within yourself, there is something even more quiet and subtle that also needs to be kept in total silence. These are your most private intuitions. Have you ever noticed that there are certain things you just know, even though you cannot explain how you know them? These are sensations that arrive very quickly and softly, yet they carry a weight that is hard to explain. For Carl Jung, intuition is not just a passing emotion or a vague piece of imagination. It is the actual voice of the unconscious mind, and it is sometimes delivered to us through meaningful coincidences that he called synchronicity. Jung once said that intuition gives both a look ahead and a deep look inside. It reveals new possibilities for your life. Intuition does not just tell you what is happening right now, it opens a doorway to what could happen in the future if you are quiet enough to listen to it. Intuition is a very special way of perceiving the world. It does not go through your regular logical thoughts, yet it has a precision and accuracy that can truly surprise you. Jung believed that the unconscious mind holds a lot of information that the conscious mind has not yet processed, and intuition acts as the bridge that connects these two different worlds. And intuition often appears as a quick feeling, a sudden image in your mind, or a small thought that simply refuses to leave you alone. But when you share that intuition with someone who has not experienced that same kind of awareness, they will immediately try to use logic to dismiss it or flatten the deep message that your unconscious has just given you. Intuition is very much like a small spark of fire. If you protect it in the right way, it can grow into a light that guides your path. But if you blow on it with too many explanations, opinions, and the doubts of other people, that spark will go out before you even have a chance to understand what it was trying to tell you. Many people have experienced this exact situation. They feel a very clear inner knowing, but the very moment they share it with others, the intuition loses its brightness and fades away until they start to doubt their own minds. This does not mean that the intuition was wrong. It simply means it was shown to the world too early. I once heard a story about a man working in the investment field who had a very strong intuition about a project. He believed it would fail. Even though all the data and numbers suggested it had great potential, he could not explain why he felt uneasy. He simply felt that something was not right. Instead of watching it further in silence, he shared this feeling with a group of coworkers. They laughed at him, saying he was being too sensitive and was not looking at the data. The pressure from those mean comments led him to ignore his intuition and go ahead with the investment. The project failed exactly the way he had sensed from the very beginning. Later, he said what he regretted the most was not the money he lost, but the moment he lost trust in that quiet voice inside of himself. To better understand how intuition works, brain science offers a very interesting view. Research by Professor Antonio Damasio shows that the human brain processes unconscious information much faster than regular conscious thoughts. This means we often know something before we can even give it a name. Intuition happens when the brain brings together data from experience, memory, and emotion, and then sends it back to you as a physical sensation. When we share an intuition that has not yet fully formed, we drag it into the logical world where it is easily picked apart and misunderstood. An intuition needs you to stay with it, watch it, and accept it, rather than trying to explain it to someone else immediately. When you sit in silence with your intuition, you allow it to grow and slowly show its true meaning to you. But when you rush to share it because you want validation, you accidentally turn it into a topic for debate and lose the sacred quality it once had. Jung believed intuition is one of the most important ways for the conscious and unconscious to talk to each other, and that is why it must be protected. Not everyone understands symbols, not everyone knows how to see synchronicity, and certainly not everyone is sensitive enough to avoid breaking the wings of an intuition that is still learning how to fly. Some people will deny it, some will laugh, and some will try to pull you back into their own comfort zone. An intuition is like a thin line of light across the sky at sunset. It can disappear with just one careless look. Therefore, the fifth thing you should not casually tell anyone is your private intuitions. Not because they must be hidden forever, but because they need a quiet space where they can speak for themselves. Let these intuitions guide your steps for a while before you let the world step in. Sometimes what ruins an intuition is not that it was wrong, but your hurry in handing it to people who cannot hear the language of the unconscious mind. Number 6. What you are trying to heal. Because the process of individuation requires privacy.
At this point, Jung leads you into an even deeper layer of the soul. Once you have started to hear the whisper of your intuition and see how the unconscious mind touches your life, you must learn not only to listen to these signals, but also to stand firmly in the parts of yourself that are in the middle of healing. The things you are trying to heal inside yourself are often extremely fragile. This is because they consist of parts of yourself that you do not fully understand yet. It might be a habit of putting yourself down, a fear of being abandoned, feelings of not being good enough, old childhood wounds, or layers of defense that you have built over many years. When you begin to work through these things, you are not just removing a layer of protection, you are stepping into the softest and most sensitive part of your soul. As Jung once said, a person does not heal by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. For this reason, just like soil that has just been turned over, any heavy step can damage the growth process. One viewer of this channel once shared her story of trying to heal a deep sense of not being worthy of love after years of bad relationships that caused her to hide her true self. On that journey, she started learning how to listen to her own needs, how to set boundaries, and how to allow herself to say no. But because she wanted someone to tell her she was doing the right thing, she shared every single change with her friends. Some of them supported her, but others said things like, "You have changed too much," or "You are becoming selfish," or "Why are you suddenly being so difficult? You used to be so gentle." Those small comments were enough to pull her back toward her old self, which was the version of herself she was trying to leave behind. Later, she said the hardest part was not learning how to love herself, but trying to hold on to that change while people who liked her old version kept trying to drag her back into the past. What slowed her journey down the most was sharing it too early and with too many people. Jung emphasized that the greatest privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But to become yourself, you need a private space that is quiet enough to rebuild your inner self without people interfering with their expectations, their opinions, or their old images of who you are. When you share what you are trying to heal, the people listening often look at you through their own problems, reflecting back their own fears, limits, and interpretations. This is exactly what makes you feel unstable, because you are in the softest stage of your transformation. Healing is very much like stitching together a piece of fabric that has been torn. You cannot sew it while you are holding it up in the middle of a busy market for everyone to comment on whether your stitches are straight or not. Every hand that touches it, every judgment, and every expectation causes the thread to break, which forces you to start all over again. Only when the fabric is resting in a quiet place, held only by your own hands, can it fix itself into the shape that your soul truly needs. One of the clearest examples of why privacy is needed for an inner rebirth is the journey of the singer Adele. After she had global success, she went through a marriage crisis and faced deep issues with her own identity. But instead of sharing her healing journey with the public like many famous people do, Adele chose to withdraw completely from the media for several years. She focused her energy on therapy, physical training, rebuilding her emotions, and fixing her relationship with herself. Only when she felt strong enough, clear enough, and steady in her new sense of self did she return with her album 30, which she described as a healing letter to herself.
By choosing to stay silent throughout that whole process, her journey stayed untouched by other people's comments, expectations, or outside pressure. That privacy allowed her to be born again in a full way. What you are healing is not a better version of yourself to show off to the world. It is a return to your most real and authentic self. The less your healing process is watched by others, the better chance it has to develop in the right way. Sharing it too early makes you weak to being pulled back into your old comfort zones, or being influenced by judgment, or accidentally changing yourself to meet what other people expect. When that happens, you are no longer healing. You are just performing a version of being okay that other people want to see. When you keep silence around your healing process, you are not alone. You are giving your soul a rare gift, the chance to grow without being pulled backward. This is the greatest gift of becoming an individual. It is about becoming yourself in the deepest, most private, and most authentic way possible. Number 7. Moments of inner awakening. Because the self appears only when you are still enough.
There is one specific kind of experience that you must protect with very special care. These are your moments of inner awakening. For Jung, these are not just sudden emotions or random thoughts. These are moments when the self appears and brings light to your life. Because these moments are sacred, they are the final thing you should not share with anyone. A single wrong interpretation, a doubtful look, or a selfish reaction from another person can twist or take away the message entirely. Jung once said that the self is the goal of our life because it is the most complete expression of our individuality. And because the self is this deepest center of who we are, every signal that comes from it must be protected by total stillness. Jung believed that the self, the deepest part of the mind, speaks only when you are still enough, not just still on the outside, but still on the inside. It speaks when the noise of your ego becomes quiet. It speaks when your anxieties stop pulling you around. It speaks when you are truly present with yourself. For this reason, moments of inner awakening are extremely delicate. They cannot survive a rushed analysis. They are not meant to be commented on by other people, and they must never be explained by someone else on your behalf. If you talk about them too soon, the ego of other people gets involved, or your own ego immediately tries to explain, define, or use logic to ruin the original message. When this happens, the self goes back into hiding, not because you were wrong, but because the moment was not kept safe enough to keep growing. A woman named Linda once shared that on a normal morning while she was making coffee, she suddenly felt something very clear. She no longer wanted to live the life that others expected of her. It wasn't because of pressure, but because she felt a deep inner call, as if something inside her had grown too big for her old life. But an hour later, when Linda told her best friend about this, the friend said, "You are overthinking again, and don't do anything crazy. You will feel better after you sleep." Just a few comments like that were enough for that special moment to disappear, leaving her doubting herself. She said what she regretted most was not slowing down, but letting others erase a message her heart had tried to give her. Moments of inner awakening are like a tiny plant just coming out of the ground. They are fragile and easily knocked down by the wind or crushed if they are shown too soon. But if you keep them in silence, take care of them, watch them, and respect their natural speed, they can grow into something that changes your whole life. Modern Jungian psychology says that these moments are not random. They happen when your unconscious, your conscious, and your unique soul all line up for a short time. It is when you see what you never saw before, or understand something that was impossible to reach before. Because this alignment is rare and delicate, it can only survive if you keep it inside, without rushing to share it, without looking for people to agree with you, and without letting the ego get in the way. Moments of inner awakening are not meant to be talked about. They are meant to live. They are not for others to validate. They are for you to enter into. They are not for seeking advice, but for asking yourself where this feeling is leading you. Jung believed the self never sends signals just to create a quick emotion. It sends them to guide you toward the path that truly belongs to you. But to follow it, you must be still and silent enough to hold that moment before letting the world touch it. Most importantly, moments of awakening do not happen many times in a life. They are rare doors that the soul opens for you to walk through. If you do not stay with them long enough, or if you let the world come in too early, the door will close without any warning. That is why the 7th thing you should not tell anyone is your moments of inner awakening. They are the language of your true self and the turning points of your life. Guard them like you would guard a candle in the wind. Protect it,
shield it, and let it burn slowly. Only when you live fully with it and let it guide you long enough will you understand its true meaning. And then you will not need to tell anyone. Your life itself will speak for you. Conclusion. Now that we have reached the end of the 7 things you should keep to yourself, you can see an important truth. The world is not always a safe place to put down the most fragile parts of your soul. This is not because other people are mean, but because they cannot see with the eyes that only you have. Dreams that aren't finished yet, new fears, delicate intuitions, or moments of awakening all need time, silence, and space for you to understand what they mean before the world touches them. In Jungian psychology, every movement of the soul starts in silence. Growth is not born from talking too much about what you are going through, but from having the bravery to watch your inner world without looking for witnesses. If you have ever wondered why Jung believed silence could change a person's life, this is the answer. When you protect what is sacred inside you, you protect the process of becoming who you were born to be. If this video touched you, share it to help others understand that sometimes what stays unspoken is your true strength. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep exploring the inner world together. See you in the next videos. In this video, we explored Carl Jung's deep ideas on why certain parts of your inner world must be protected instead of shared. You learned the 7 things: your desires, your fears, your intuitions, your wounds, your judgments, your healing processes, and your awakenings that lose their power when they are shown too early. By using these principles as daily inner habits, you begin to save your mental energy, strengthen your trust in yourself, and move through life with more clarity and stability. These lessons help you stop looking for others to validate you, help you recognize the voice of your unconscious, and allow real transformation to happen without interference. Over time, you will experience deeper confidence, sharper intuition, emotional independence, and a quiet sense of peace where your life reflects who you truly are, not who you have tried to explain yourself to be.